Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 10 based on novel. So let's start. The 10,000 feet large giant tiger released an extended roar towards the sky. A dreadful sound wave spread, causing the land to crumble. Even dark clouds had gathered in the sky because of the terrifying fiendish aura. The giant tiger was like the destroyer of the world, while its giant scarlet eyes were filled with a frightening murderous intent. The numerous floating figures in the nearby sky hurriedly withdrew. They would surely die if they were implicated in a fight of this level. He has actually pushed Shusong to such an extent. The expressions on several people's faces were quite amazed as they pulled back. Shusong was from the Dark Abyss Tiger tribe, hence his fighting strength was extremely astonishing. This final combat form was usually only used to deal with Demon Commander level opponents. Yet, some looked towards the skinny figure in the distance. Even though he appeared extremely tiny in the face of Shusong's 10,000 feet large body, no one dared to underestimate him. Even Shusong had ceased doing so. The battle before their eyes was a rare sight seen even in the Beast War region. He has even pulled out his Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body. Qinsha, who was hard-pressed by the sky-devouring corpse, glanced over. Soon after, his eyes quickly hardened. There was a grave expression and shock in his eyes as he looked at Lin Dong from afar. That brat, is he really so strong? What an abnormal existence. Qinsha was similarly one of the 8 great demon commanders. Conflicts frequently broke out between 100 Beast Ridge and Deep Lightning Mountain, and both of them had also clashed before. Hence, he was well aware of how powerful Shusong was after activating this Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body. Only a handful of people in the entire Beast War region could force him to use this technique. Just where did this fellow come from? Not only does he possess such a powerful dragon tribe body tempering technique, he even has a puppet that is so difficult to deal with. Qinsha's eyes flickered. Regret had already started to rise within his heart. He had only agreed to intervene because he heard that they were only dealing with Little Flame. Who could have foreseen that a ferocious individual like Lin Dong would pop out from nowhere? Lin Dong lifted his head and looked at the enormous and terrible beast that could crush a mountain. He could detect an extremely dangerous sensation from the latter's body. Evidently, the current Shusong had already pushed his battle power to the limit. The demon commander did indeed live up to his reputation. Lin Dong, it is an honor for you to die at the hands of this King's Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body. The giant tiger lowered its head as those blood-red eyes stared at Lin Dong. In the next instant, it opened its mouth and an energy ripple, which caused one's scalp to turn numb, gathered, before a ray of grey light immediately shot forth. The grey light beam directly penetrated through empty space. Everyone could only see a grey light flash in the sky. Subsequently, a light beam that contained destructive fluctuations mercilessly blasted Lin Dong's body. A deep sound appeared as the land instantly crumbled. The skinny figure flew backwards, shattering a couple of mountains along the way. He only came to a stop after slamming into the 10th mountain. Everyone looked at the row of mountains that had been blown apart while the skin on their heads felt as if it was about to burst. Was this Shusong's power after unleashing the Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body? It had actually reached such terrifying levels. The previous blow would likely instantly seriously injure even an ordinary perfect profound death stage expert to the point where the latter would lose all ability to fight. I wonder if that Lin Dong is still alive. All eyes gathered on the ruins of a certain mountain. A moment later, they saw a hand was extend from within the boulders. It pushed aside the surrounding boulders as a somewhat ragged figure appeared. As expected of the Dark Abyss Tiger tribe, Lin Dong lifted his head in front of the many stunned pairs of eyes. A trace of blood had appeared at the corner of his mouth while a human head-sized scarlet-red cauldron floated above his shoulder. There was a fist-sized dent on the cauldron. He used the cauldron to block that certain kill strike her. Several people looked at the scarlet-red light cauldron as surprise flashed across their eyes. But it is not as overwhelming as I imagined. Lin Dong's black eyes suddenly turned serious. His body moved and he rushed forward like a phantom. With a clench of his hand, the lightning emperor scepter appeared once again as thunder clouds quickly whistled over in the sky. Bang! Lightning surged on the lightning emperor scepter as 9 lightning dragons separated from the top of the scepter as if they had been revived. They rushed forward with lightning speed and ruthlessly smashed into the giant dull grey tiger. The lightning dragons exploded and lightning danced all over Shu Shong's giant body. However, it appeared to be unable to break that layer of mysterious dull grey scales. You think you can break this king's dark abyss armor with an attack of this level? A mocking laughter was emitted from Shu Shong's huge mouth. Immediately, his tiger eyes turned cold. Another black light ray shot out with lightning speed and ruthlessly smashed towards Lin Dong. Lin Dong rapidly retreated when he saw this as the burning sky cauldron immediately swelled in front of him. This attack of Shu Shong's was indeed quite powerful. Even Lin Dong did not dare to casually receive it with his body. A metallic sound reverberated across the place and the burning sky cauldron was immediately sent flying backwards. Another dent appeared on its surface, causing Lin Dong's eyes to narrow. He was well aware of the defensive strength of the burning sky cauldron. It was not a simple feat to leave such a mark on it. Lin Dong grasped the lightning emperor scepter as his toes suddenly pushed off the burning sky cauldron. In a flash, he appeared above Shu Shong. The lightning emperor scepter in his hand turned into an extremely powerful scepter shadow as it smashed onto the latter's giant body like a storm. Green dragon light tattoos circled around each scepter shadow. These attacks were exceptionally fierce. Sparks spluttered on Shu Shong's huge body. However, his dull grey scale armor did not budge. It was as though it was the strongest defense in the world. Ha ha, the current you is as comical as a clown. Shu Shong laughed loudly. The bone wings on his back were so sharp that they seemed to be capable of cutting space as they whizzed forward and ruthlessly sliced at Lin Dong. Numerous gazes watched the situation start to change again as they involuntarily smacked their lips together. What a frightening defense Shu Shong has. The strongest techniques of the Dark Abyss Tiger tribe are the Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body and the Dark Abyss armor. If Lin Dong is unable to break this defense, it will be impossible for him to hurt Shu Shong and it will be meaningless to continue fighting. It is not easy to break the Dark Abyss armor. When Qin Shi and Shu Shong exchanged blows back then, the former spent an entire day wildly smashing Shu Shong's Dark Abyss armor to no avail. Finally, their fight ended in a draw. This Lin Dong is really out of luck. However, it was not easy for him to push Shu Shong to such an extent. Clang! The lightning emperor scepter ruthlessly smashed onto Shu Shong's huge body. A shocking force spread back towards him, causing his arm to feel somewhat numb. His expression was also a little grave. It was evidently not as easy to deal with Shu Shong as he had expected. Sharp bone wings rushed at him with lightning speed while Lin Dong quickly retreated. However, a strand of hair was still cut by that sharp aura. After activating the Dark Abyss Heavenly Tiger body, Shu Shong's offense and defense had risen substantially. What a troublesome Dark Abyss armor. Lin Dong withdrew as he observed Shu Shong below, who appeared to be covered in a turtle shell-like armor, and muttered. Lin Dong, are you going to give up like this? Shu Shong's tiger eyes contained ridicule as they stared at Lin Dong. The way the latter had jumped and fled like an ant caused him to be extremely pleased in his heart. Lin Dong looked at Shu Shong and frowned slightly as he spoke in a flat voice. It is too early for you to be happy. Is that so? Shu Shong heartily laughed towards the sky. You can't even break my defense. What else can you do? Lin Dong slightly narrowed his eyes. Soon after, his gaze swept across Shu Shong's enormous body, which was covered by the Dark Abyss armor. Without replying, essence blood flew out from the tip of his finger as a mysterious light formation quickly appeared in his palm. The essence blood entered the light formation and rumbling was emitted from it. Soon after, everyone watched the light formation expand at a frightening speed. Within a short period, it had reached 10,000 feet in size. It covered the sky and looked extremely astonishing. Shu Shong lifted his head to look at the huge formation as bewilderment flashed in his eyes. Ancient universe formation. The universe is the heaven and earth. Universe reversal, split heaven and earth. The seals formed by Lin Dong's hands changed like lightning while the light formation in the sky began to rotate in the reverse direction. Waves of unique fluctuations began to gather like a storm within it. The light formation shook. Soon after, a huge light pillar came raging downwards. Subsequently, it enveloped Xu Shong's giant body. The light pillar covered him. Soon after, everyone's pupils shrunk. They could see that the layer of dark abyss armor covering Xu Shong's body, which could block the fully powered attacks of any perfect profound death stage expert, was actually being disintegrated at a frightening pace at this moment. Moreover, while the dark abyss armor was being disintegrated, the thick baleful aura around Xu Shong also rapidly disappeared. How can this be? Everyone were alarmed. How is this possible? Xu Shong was also greatly startled. Under the light pillar, he felt as though even the yuan power within his body was gradually being disintegrated. Let me see just what you can use to block me now. Lin Dong's face had suddenly turned ferocious at this moment. His body charged forward and he clenched his hand while 100 green dragon-like tattoos gathered. Following which, a punch was ruthlessly thrown at Xu Shong's body, which had lost the protection of the dark abyss armor. Bang! A low and deep sound spread and Xu Shong immediately released a sharp and miserable screech. His 10,000 feet large body directly flew backwards, smashing many mountains in the process. The light array rotated in the sky and the light pillar once again enveloped Xu Shong. Weren't you extremely arrogant just now? Lin Dong's body appeared behind Xu Shong in a ghost-like fashion. His leg wiggled and turned into a green dragon claw that violently whipped at Xu Shong. Bang! The huge tiger was kicked and sent flying again. Boiling hot blood sprinkled onto the ground like bloody rain. Come on, scream for me again. Lin Dong bathed within the blood that filled the sky as his mouth cracked upon to form a grin. Those sinisterly white teeth made others feel a chill in their hearts. Soon after, his body moved and he lifted a huge mountain. He held it with both of his hands, holding the tip of the mountain as he ruthlessly smashed it down onto Xu Shong's huge body like a giant hammer. Bang bang bang. Low and deep sounds echoed and the atmosphere of the entire area froze. Everyone watched as the mountain ruthlessly smashed onto Xu Shong's body again and again, while miserable tiger screams continuously emerged, cursing the young man. At this moment, their faces were completely blank. Going to keep screaming? Bang! Still going to scream again. Bang! Chen Tong's group was petrified as they watched this scene from far away. The huge mountain was just like a large hammer. It had an extremely stunning effect as it ruthlessly smashed onto Xu Shong's huge body while miserable tiger roars continued to resound in the sky. Everyone's expressions was undoubtedly somewhat stiff as they watched this scene. It was only a moment later before they finally recovered. Yet they felt some disbelief. Who could have imagined that Xu Shong, who just moments ago occupied the advantageous position, would be reduced to such a state in the blink of an eye? How did it turn out like this? Chen Tong's group was petrified as they mumbled. A long while later, their eyes suddenly looked towards the huge light formation in the sky. The light pillar covered Xu Shong and each time majestic yuan power surged out from Xu Shong's body, it would be disintegrated by the light pillar. Is that formation the cause of the rapid fall in Xu Shong's fighting strength? Everyone's eyes flashed as they came to a sudden comprehension. Immediately, they felt some fear in their hearts. Just what was this light formation? It was actually so powerful. Not only was it able to disintegrate the unusually powerful dark abyss armor on Xu Shong's body, but it could even disintegrate the yuan power in the latter's body. What a terrifying person! Although everyone was unfamiliar with that light formation, it did not hinder them from feeling shocked by Lin Dong's current crazy actions. Bang! The mountain in Lin Dong's hand was finally unable to endure the tremendous force and finally exploded. Below, blood drenched Xu Shong's entire body. Numerous bloody wounds were exposed on his body and even white bone could be seen. Lin Dong casually threw aside the remnant boulder in his hand. He panted a little before taking a look at the unusually miserable Xu Shong, whose body was covered in fresh blood. It was not that the latter did not wish to resist, but the ancient universe formation had suppressed the yuan power within his body. In other words, Lin Dong had turned him into an ordinary giant beast that had no power to resist for that short span of time. Only with the advancement of Lin Dong's strength to the profound death stage was he able to use the ancient universe formation to achieve such a suppression. If it was in the past, the ancient universe formation was only able to disintegrate a portion of this energy. In other words, it would be impossible to reach the level where it could completely suppress a peak-level perfect profound death stage expert. Such ability was considered an abnormality. After all, just imagining how it could turn a powerful opponent into someone who could barely use any of the Yuan power within his body was enough to know just how frightening this was. Although this was only for a short period, most of the time, it was basically able to decide the victor of the fight. Of course, this ability might be powerful, but if it failed to lock onto a target, it was basically impossible to activate it. Earlier, Xu Song had been caught in this formation because he was careless and was unable to fully comprehend its usage. Soon after, he turned from a lively tiger into a foolish beast who could do nothing but receive a beating. Lin Dong was evidently extremely well versed in adding insult to injury. He took advantage of this opening and directly beat the originally proud and awe-inspiring Xu Song into an incomparably miserable state. The huge formation in the sky began to shake and the light pillar covering Xu Song turned illusory. Despite the great power of the ancient universe formation, it was still not an easy task to completely suppress a peak-perfect profound death stage expert. Is it unable to suppress him any longer? Lin Dong merely smiled faintly when he saw this scene. Soon after, he walked towards the giant dull grey tiger. The latter's scarlet-red tiger eyes were filled with bitterness and fear. "I'll just have to cripple you first." Lin Dong's footsteps paused in front of Xu Song. With a clench of his hand, the lightning emperor scepter appeared in a flash. Thunderbolts crazily surged on it. Soon after, his eyes hardened. He did not hesitate at all as the lightning emperor scepter in his hand ruthlessly stabbed at Xu Song's giant body. A mournful screech immediately sounded while lightning crazily flickered on Xu Song's body. His enormous figure began to shrink rapidly. A moment later, he turned back into human form. The lightning emperor scepter had pierced through his shoulder while fresh blood flowed from the wound. Lin Dong grabbed and pulled out the lightning emperor scepter. Subsequently, the scepter was ruthlessly swung at Xu Song's body. An enormous force sent the latter flying 1,000 feet backwards. "You have lost." Lin Dong was indifferent as he gazed upon the deathly pale Xu Song to his front. The latter's aura was already relatively weak. It was obvious that Lin Dong had managed to severely injure him earlier. He no longer had any strength to fight. The victor of this battle had already been decided. All eyes gathered and an uproar soon followed. No one could have imagined that this battle would actually have such a dramatic result. General Meng Shan and Tian Yi had completely pale faces. The former in particular was even paler than his counterpart. His entire body broke out in cold sweat the moment he thought of how he had attempted to capture Lin Dong back then. Fortunately, Lin Dong had not retaliated. Otherwise, it was likely that he would not even have the opportunity to escape. Blood was spat out from Xu Song's mouth under the many watching eyes. He resentfully stared at Lin Dong and laughed coldly. "You do have many tricks. However, do you think you are a match for this king if we were to really engage in a direct fight? All tricks are considered strength in a life or death battle. You are after all a demon commander. At the very least, you should not speak such laughable words, right?" Lin Dong's eyes watched Xu Song in a strange fashion as he retorted. Xu Song was speechless. However, the bitter resentment in his eyes did not diminish. "It's about time for the victor of the battle there to be decided." Lin Dong ignored Xu Song. He lifted his head to look at the distant sky where monstrous bloodlight was spreading. A tiger roar resounded across the sky as bloodlight gushed out and a black figure also ended up flying backwards. Finally, it left a 10,000 feet deep scar on the ground. Bang! A blood-red light figure descended from the sky. At this moment, Little Flame was in a half-beast combat form. Many bloody wounds covered his body as fresh blood flowed, causing his originally ferocious face to appear even more terrifying. He had clearly experienced a relatively intense battle earlier. Little Flame took a huge step forward, grabbed the now equally frail shadow guard and tossed him towards Shushong. His face was malicious. "Do you still recall what I said to you when you snatched half of my essence blood inheritance back then? I said that it belongs to me and you will eventually return it." Shushong glanced at the shadow guard who had been tossed to his side. The expression in his eyes was dark as he wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth. Little Flame had indeed said this back then. However, would the Shushong from back then even give a second glance to a Little Flame who had only just reached the profound life stage? At that time, Little Flame was perhaps akin to an ant in his eyes. He had simply ignored the provocations of an ant. Who could have imagined that the ant from back then would ultimately manage to overthrow him? "Hand over the essence blood inheritance." Lin Dong looked at Shushong and softly said. Shushong wiped off the blood on his face as he darkly stared at the Lin Dong duo. Soon after, he stood up while grabbing the shadow guard beside him. He then lifted his head and looked at the countless pairs of eyes around. Never would have imagined that he, one of the 8 great demon commanders, would actually end up in such a miserable state. "Ha ha, I am a demon commander. It will be far too embarrassing for me to be defeated by you." Shushong's voice was a little hoarse as he muttered. "Do you still intend to struggle?" Little Flame sneered. Shushong turned his head to look at Lin Dong and Little Flame. Suddenly, he laughed. "Are all of you curious about this shadow guard?" Lin Dong frowned slightly. "I will let all of you see his true appearance." Shushong's lips parted into a smile that was rather distorted. Next, he pulled off the black robe that covered the body of the shadow guard and a familiar face appeared in everyone's sights. "That is Shushong." The entire place was silent. Following which, many exclamations sounded. This was because the shadow guard's appearance was exactly the same as Shushong's. However, the latter's eyes seemed to be hollow. Was it a puppet? "This is my twin brother. However, I forcibly snatched his life force at birth, hence causing him to be extremely weak the moment he was born. Subsequently, he died due to poor health while he was gradually growing up." As Shushong stroked the shadow guard's face with his hand, one could feel a chill originating from within the bone while looking at his smile. "After his death, I used a secret technique to refine him into a ghost body that shares my life. Although this secret technique was vicious, it does have a benefit. I managed to turn the energy of this ghost body into my own. Ha ha, actually, this body is a cauldron that I have reared, something that was born from my biological brother." The entire place was silent. Several people's expression had changed slightly after hearing these words. Shushong's viciousness had exceeded everyone's expectations. "Now, it is time for this brother of mine to repay me." Shushong grinned as many bloody lines suddenly spread outwards from under his feet. They appeared like a blood formation that covered both himself and the shadow guard. Like a blade, his hand was stabbed into the chest of the shadow guard. Blood gushed out and the shadow guard's body quickly withered. At the same time, Shushong's aura also swelled at an extremely terrifying speed. He had reached the boundary of the samsara stage. A frightening airwave swept out in a crazy fashion, stopping anyone from approaching. "This bastard!" Little Flame's expression was alarmed and furious as he watched this scene. Clearly, he did not expect that such an unforeseen event would occur. Shushong is actually about to break into the samsara stage. Numerous exclamations sounded in the vicinity. They could sense an aura that made breathing difficult rapidly taking shape. "Big brother, what do we do?" Little Flame looked towards Lin Dong and asked in a deep voice. Lin Dong's expression was indifferent as he looked at the devil-like Shushong laughing wildly at the sky while an almost solid murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Soon after, he slowly lifted his hand under the many watching eyes and curled 2 of his fingers. A pitch-black color appeared on one finger while resplendent silver appeared on the other, and there even seemed to be lightning overflowing from the silver finger. Brothers should not be used in such a manner. Bright red blood continuously dripped from between Lin Dong's fingers while his complexion rapidly paled. 2 vague and ancient tiny symbols appeared to have surfaced at his fingertips. "Hence, you should die." After Lin Dong's soft voice sounded, a blood-red light ray suddenly shot out from between his fingers. Black light and lightning intertwined within the fresh blood. These two energies were perfectly compatible like yin and yang. The ray of blood-red light shot straight forward, easily shattering the frightening energy around Shu Shong. Blood-red light flashed and the ray of light directly penetrated his forehead. The ferocious smile on Shu Shong's face suddenly froze at this moment. A thin ray of blood-red light shot across the sky. Subsequently, it seemed to tear apart space and disappear within it in a flash. At this moment, everyone's eyes were glued to Shu Shong's gradually stiffening face. They could see life rapidly disappearing from the latter's scarlet eyes and the lingering horror within them. How can it be? Blood flowed down Shu Shong's forehead as the world in front of him began to turn dark. His unsteady gaze saw the lifted hand of the young man in the distance. Even at this moment, he was unable to accept the truth. Lin Dong had actually tore apart the energy field that he was using to advance to the samsara stage and forcibly delivered the fatal blow. The energy field from earlier was something that even an expert at the peak of the profound death stage like himself would not be able to break into. Yet, Lin Dong's attack had managed to shatter it with ease. What was that attack? This fellow was still holding back her. The scene before Shu Shong's eyes rapidly turned to darkness. His body swaggered and finally collapsed onto the ground with a thud in front of those many pairs of extremely shocked eyes. I'm really unresigned. After these last words sounded within his heart, Shu Shong's consciousness completely disappeared. A mighty demon commander had died. The entire deep lightning mountain had become completely quiet at this moment. A breeze blew over, but it was unable to blow away the frozen atmosphere on the messy mountain. Shu Shong was dead. Many pairs of eyes gazed at the figure that had collapsed as their pupils expanded slightly. This was the demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain. Has he really been finished off by that human young man called Lin Dong in such a fashion? How did this happen? Several people mumbled. This was after all one of the 8 great demon commanders of the Beast War region. Although Shui Song's strength was not outstanding amongst the 8 great demon commanders, he was still a demon commander who ruled a great territory. There were hardly anyone in the Beast War region who could defeat him. Everyone could imagine just how frightening a commotion this matter would stir within the Beast War region when the news spread. The entire mountain was completely quiet. Fresh blood was still dripping from Lin Dong's fingertips as he slowly lowered his hands. His face appeared exceptionally pale. The earlier attack was the fusion of the power of 2 ancestral symbols in his body and a tremendous amount of essence blood. Hence, it was terrifying exhausting for him. However, Lin Dong had no choice. Although Lin Dong was aware that allowing Shu Shong to devour his brother would only give him a 30% chance of successfully advancing into the samsara stage, Lin Dong did not dare to take such a risk. Once Shu Shong successfully advanced, the situation would be completely different. Although the Lin Dong duo would not die, it would be extremely difficult for them to achieve their objective. Big brother, you all right? Little Flame was alarmed when he saw Lin Dong's complexion and hurriedly asked. Lin Dong gently shook his head. He was just about to speak when his face suddenly turned cold. He abruptly lifted his head and saw a light figure rushing over from far away. The latter was extending his hand in an attempt to grab Shu Shong's body. You are courting death. Lin Dong let out a cold cry. He curled 2 fingers and was about to thrust them again. That light figure had clearly witnessed Lin Dong's extremely terrifying finger attack from earlier. Hence, he was frightened upon witnessing this scene and his forward-charging body stopped. At this moment, Little Flame also reacted. The latter let out a furious roar as he charged forward and a ferocious palm wind ruthlessly smashed towards the light figure. Bang! A fierce wind unfurled while Little Flame hurriedly took a couple of steps back. The light figure was revealed to be Qinsha. Humph! Lin Dong's eyes were icy. A thought flashed through his mind and the sky-devouring corpse hurried over. It appeared in front of Qinsha and blocked him. Do you plan to avenge Shu Shong? Lin Dong stared at Qinsha and slowly questioned. Qinsha laughed dryly upon hearing this. His eyes were filled with wariness and fear as he looked at Lin Dong. Shu Shong's death was also a huge shock to him. Since his strength was similar to Shu Shong, it meant that Lin Dong had the power to kill him. Moreover, there was still that sky-devouring corpse that gave him a big headache. Both he and Xu Shong did not have much of a friendship to begin with. The reason he had helped was due to the generous terms Xu Shong had offered. However, Xu Shong was already dead and there was no longer any meaning in that transaction. It was pointless for him to become enemies with this troublesome Lin Dong. What is young brother Lin Dong saying? There is no deep friendship between Xu Shong and I have no reason to avenge him. Qinsha laughed. His eyes flickered as he glanced at Xu Shong's corpse and said, "It is just that I wish to conduct a transaction with young brother Lin Dong. Why don't you give this corpse of Xu Shong's to me?" Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he stared at Qinsha. The latter smilingly looked at him. His face appeared extremely cunning. "I'm sorry. I'm afraid that I cannot accept this request." Lin Dong smiled faintly. The other half of the essence blood inheritance that Little Flame needed was in Xu Shong's body. Even though the essence blood inheritance had been refined by Xu Shong, Lin Dong had the means to force it out. Qinsha's expression altered slightly as he laughed dryly. "Young brother Lin Dong, why don't you give the matter some thought? It is never be a bad thing to befriend another person in this beast war region. Does brother Qinsha not wish to befriend me?" Lin Dong asked with a half smile. The corners of Qinsha's mouth twitched. He subsequently glanced at the sky-devouring corpse, which was less than a dozen steps from him. After which, he vigilantly stared at Little Flame. His body finally relaxed slowly as he spoke in a somewhat dry voice. "How can that be possible? This king is only too happy to become acquainted with brother Lin Dong in this fight." Lin Dong smiled. He waved his sleeve and the burning sky cauldron flew out and sucked Xu Shong's corpse into it. Qinsha could only quietly sigh upon seeing this as disappointment flashed across his eyes. Lin Dong caught sight of this expression and felt a little baffled in his heart. Did this Qinsha also know about the other half of the essence blood inheritance in Xu Shong's body? However, Qinsha was part of the lion tribe. It was impossible for him to perfectly absorb the essence blood inheritance even if he managed to obtain it. The originally tensed atmosphere on Deep Lightning Mountain suddenly relaxed following the disappearance of Xu Shong's corpse. Chen Tong and the rest exchanged glances upon seeing this. Soon after, they knelt on one knee. Some of the guards of Deep Lightning Mountain behind them hesitated for a moment before kneeling while feeling a little lost. Clearly, Chen Tong's 5-men group had substantial influence in Deep Lightning Mountain. "General Yang, please become the commander." A low and deep cry spread within Deep Lightning Mountain. The guards of Deep Lightning Mountain also echoed after them and a thunderous cry reverberated across the sky. Many people from Deep Lightning Mountain were stunned as they watched this scene with some anxiety. Was Deep Lightning Mountain changing owners? Meng Shan and General Tian Yi were also somewhat panicking. However, the death of Xu Shong had made them lose all of their courage. Neither of them dared to voice any objection. Rumble. A rumbling sound suddenly appeared from below Deep Lightning Mountain at this moment. Soon after, everyone saw a metallic-like black torrent that gave off an earth-shaking ferocious aura as it swept over. It was the tiger-devouring army. "General Yang, please become the commander." The tiger-devouring army suddenly paused when it was still some distance from the top of the mountain. After which, they knelt with one knee on the ground. Their orderly cry was just like a tiger roar. Crash! Some of the still hesitating experts of Deep Lightning Mountain finally clenched their teeth and knelt along with the huge crowd when the aura of the tiger-devouring army swept over. "General Yang, please become the commander." Those leaders of the various factions located within the territory of Deep Lightning Mountain were also aware of the current situation after witnessing this scene. With Xu Shong's death, the only one in Deep Lightning Mountain who was most suitable to become the demon commander was Little Flame. Since they were unable to change this result, it was better to quickly establish a good relationship with this new demon commander. Otherwise, their lives would become a lot harder in future. Lin Dong watched the grand scene before him as a smile surfaced on his pale face. He was a human. Regardless of how strong he was, it was extremely difficult for these people from Deep Lightning Mountain to accept him as the new demon commander. Moreover, He did not like such a position to begin with. Hence, it was naturally best if this position could be taken by Little Flame. Therefore, he could only look towards Little Flame and nod. Little Flame hesitated for a moment upon seeing this. Finally, he agreed. Deep Lightning Mountain was a pretty good faction. It would be quite beneficial for them if he could take control of it. When they charge back to the Eastern Xian region in future, this would perhaps even become a relatively powerful trump card. Little Flame flew into the sky under the many watching eyes as his tiger eyes swept over the entire place. Finally, he looked towards Mengshan and General Qian Yi. Will the two of you submit? The Mengshan duo's expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. They hesitated for a moment under the countless needle-like gazes around them. Finally, they knelt with one knee. At this moment, they had lost all courage to resist. Little Flame nodded after seeing this. He looked towards Huan Miao, the only one left standing, and said, "You can leave if you do not wish to stay in Deep Lightning Mountain." Humph, how impressive. Huan Miao stared at the hulk-like Little Flame and snorted softly. However, her face gradually reddened. Subsequently, she knelt with one knee on the ground without her usual haughty manner. What shocked Chen Tong and the rest the most was the fact that this woman had never acted so obediently back when Xu Song accepted her as a commander. At this very moment, the entire Deep Lightning Mountain had lost all resistance. Little Flame stood in the sky as his tiger eyes swept over the place. Finally, he waved his large hand, appearing a little imposing. His deep voice also resounded within Deep Lightning Mountain. Nothing will change in Deep Lightning Mountain. Everyone will hold the same position as before with the exception of the Demon Commander. Congratulations, Commander Yang. Countless people lowered their heads as an orderly and respectful cry reverberated across the land in a majestic fashion. The owner of Deep Lightning Mountain had finally changed amidst this mighty cry. This video will end here.